Listen, most people are scared of being alone. They're terrified of silence. They'll do anything to keep themselves distracted, scrolling endlessly, watching garbage, surrounding themselves with noise. Why? Because silence forces you to face yourself, and that's the one person most people are running from, themselves. But here's the truth: you will never meet your soul in the crowd, you'll only meet it in isolation. When the voices of the world shut down, when the opinions stop flooding in, when it's just you and your thoughts, that's when the real conversation begins. Isolation strips away the fake version of you. No masks, no pretending, no validation from others, just raw, unfiltered truth, and that truth is uncomfortable. It will slap you in the face. It will expose your weaknesses. It will remind you of every lie you've told yourself. But it will also reveal your strength, your hunger, your purpose. You don't find your calling in comfort. You don't discover your best self when you're busy pleasing the world. You discover it when the world is shut out, when the noise is gone, and you're forced to confront the man or woman staring back in the mirror. That's why isolation is not punishment. It's the training ground. It's the laboratory where the soul gets built. Every great leader, every warrior, every high performer, at some point, they went into isolation and they came out sharper, stronger, and more alive. So stop being afraid of being alone. Stop running to distractions every time you feel silence. Lean into it. Sit in the stillness. Let it burn, because on the other side of that fire is the real you. And once you meet that person, your soul, you'll never settle for anything less again. Most people are addicted to distractions. They fill every second of their day with noise, scrolling through their phones, watching meaningless shows, or surrounding themselves with people who add nothing to their growth. It's not because they don't have time to be alone. It's because they're afraid of what happens when they are. Silence is uncomfortable. It forces you to sit with your own thoughts. It makes you look at the truth you've been avoiding. And for most people, that truth is ugly. They don't want to admit they're not working as hard as they should. They don't want to admit they've been making excuses. They don't want to admit they've been lying to themselves for years. So what do? They drown it all out. They keep the music blasting. They keep the feed refreshing. They keep the schedule packed with empty activities, because the second the noise stops, the mirror appears, and that mirror doesn't lie. In silence, you start hearing the voice you've been ignoring, the one that says you're capable of more, the one that reminds you of promises you broke to yourself, the one that keeps whispering about the dreams you buried under fear and laziness. That's why people run. They don't run from silence itself. They run from the confrontation it brings. Distractions are the escape. They're the perfect way to hide from accountability. But here's the thing: growth never comes from hiding. It never comes from noise. It never comes from living in constant escape mode. Growth comes from facing the silence. It comes from shutting off the world and daring to listen to your own soul. Yes, it's brutal. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it will expose every weakness you have, but it will also give you clarity. It will also give you direction. It will also remind you of the power you forgot you had. You'll never find that in distraction. You'll only find it when you stop running from yourself. And the only way to stop running is to sit still, to embrace the silence, to look in the mirror without flinching, because that's where the real work begins. Isolation has a way of stripping everything down to the core. When you're alone, there's no one to impress. There's no audience clapping for you. There's no validation coming from the outside. It's just you. And that's when the truth shows up. Isolation removes the filters you put on for the world. It takes away the performance you've been giving just to fit in. It takes away the masks you wear every single day. And what's left is the raw, unfiltered version of who you really are. Some people can't handle that, because the person they meet in isolation isn't the one they pretend to be in public. The person they meet is the one who's been carrying guilt, shame, fear, and doubt. The one who knows the promises that were broken, the one who remembers the shortcuts that were taken, the one who knows how much potential has been wasted, and isolation shines a spotlight on that truth. That's why so many people run from it. They fill their lives with endless company and constant chatter, because the silence of isolation exposes them. It makes them face the lies they've been telling themselves. But here's the thing, that's also where the breakthrough happens. Because when the fake version of you gets stripped away, the real you finally has room to breathe. The real you doesn't need approval. The real you doesn't need to perform. The real you doesn't hide behind excuses. The real you wants to grow, wants to win, wants to step into the life you know you're capable of living. Isolation reveals both sides, the weakness and the strength. It forces you to see the darkness you've been ignoring, but it also introduces you to the fire that's been buried deep inside, the fire that's been waiting for silence, the fire that doesn't need applause to burn. That's the power of isolation. It's not punishment. It's not loneliness. It's truth. And once you've seen that truth, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to pretending. You can't go back to hiding. You can't go back to being a watered-down version of yourself, because the truth revealed in isolation changes everything. It shows you exactly who you are, and it shows you exactly who you could be. Silence is one of the most powerful teachers you'll ever encounter. Most people see silence as empty, as nothingness, as dead space they want to avoid, but silence is alive, it carries weight, it carries truth. And if you have the courage to sit in it long enough, silence will expose the real you in ways the noise of life never could. Silence strips away the distractions, the excuses, the background chatter that normally clouds your mind. It leaves you face to face with yourself, and that's where the real test begins, because silence has a way of shining a spotlight on your weaknesses. It shows you the patterns you've been ignoring. It shows you the fears you keep burying. It reminds you of the promises you've broken and the opportunities you've let slip away. In silence, every flaw you've been covering up gets magnified. Every insecurity comes knocking. Every excuse you've made echoes louder than ever before. And that's why so many people run from it. They can't stand the discomfort of facing the weaknesses they've been hiding behind distractions. But here's the truth most people don't realize. Silence doesn't just expose weakness. It also reveals strength. When you endure the discomfort long enough, something starts to shift. After the noise in your head calms down, after the storm of self-doubt quiets, a deeper voice begins to speak. This is the voice that reminds you of who you really are beneath all the fear. It's the voice that reminds you of the battles you've already survived. It's the voice that whispers about the resilience you didn't even know you had. In silence, you discover that weakness and strength are not opposites. They are two sides of the same coin. By facing your weakness, you uncover your strength. By confronting your failures, you awaken your purpose. Silence exposes the cracks in your foundation, but it also shows you the solid ground you can build on. And the deeper you go into silence, the more layers you peel back. You start to see that your struggles weren't just random suffering. They were training, they were carving out resilience, they were shaping you for something bigger. Silence has the power to reveal that bigger picture. It gives you clarity. It gives you perspective. It gives you the space to hear the whispers of your purpose, something you'll never hear in the noise of constant distraction. Your purpose doesn't scream at you. It doesn't come packaged with flashing lights and loud applause. It speaks in a quiet, steady tone, and you can only hear it when you're still enough, when you've silenced the chaos of the outside world. That's why silence is not weakness. Silence is strength in its purest form. It's the willingness to face the parts of yourself you'd rather ignore. It's the courage to sit still when everything in you wants to run. It's the discipline to hold space for truth, even when that truth is uncomfortable. And once you've sat in that silence long enough, something incredible happens. You stop running from your weakness. You stop denying it. You start owning it, and in that ownership, you discover your power. You realize that the very things you thought were holding you back, the doubt, the fear, the pain, were actually the fuel for your purpose, because purpose is not built on comfort. It's not built on easy days and smooth roads. It's built in the silence of struggle. It's built in the stillness where you learn who you are and what you're willing to fight for. And silence reveals exactly that. It reveals what matters most to you. It reveals the mission that pulls you out of bed when everything else tells you to stay down. It reveals the strength that doesn't come from outside validation, but from within. This is why the people who embrace silence rise above. They don't see it as emptiness, they see it as the forge where their character is built. They see it as the fire where their weakness gets melted down into strength. They see it as the space where their purpose becomes undeniable. Silence doesn't lie, it doesn't sugarcoat, it doesn't flatter you with false praise. It tells you exactly where you're weak, and it tells you exactly where you're strong. And when you have the courage to accept both, that's when you become unstoppable. Because now you're not living in denial. Now you're not hiding behind distractions. Now you're not pretending to be someone you're not. You've faced the weakness, you've uncovered the strength, and you've discovered the purpose that ties it all together. That's the gift of silence. That's the truth it carries. It exposes, it refines, and it awakens. And once you've experienced that, you'll never see silence the same way again. Greatness has never been built in the middle of the crowd. It has never been born in the comfort of constant noise, or in the chaos of always being surrounded by people. Greatness is built in solitude. It is in those quiet, lonely hours where no one is watching that leaders and high performers forge their true identity. Most people don't understand this. They think greatness is about what others see, about the applause, about the spotlight. They think it comes from being recognized, validated, and celebrated. But the truth is, none of that matters if you haven't already built yourself in the dark. Solitude is the training ground. It's the place where you strip away every distraction, every false identity, every opinion that was ever forced onto you. In solitude, you are not performing for anyone. There is no audience, there is no approval, there is no judgment. There is only you, your thoughts, your discipline, and your will, and that's exactly why it is so powerful. Because when all the noise is gone, you are forced to answer the hardest question of all: who are you really? Leaders and high performers know this truth. They know solitude is not emptiness, it is not weakness. It is where they sharpen themselves into weapons. It is where they create the vision that others can't see yet. It is where they take responsibility for every flaw, every shortcoming, and every failure. Solitude is where the excuses die. It's where the lies you tell yourself get burned away. It's where the shallow version of you gets destroyed so that the real version of you can emerge. And let me tell you something. If you can't be strong in solitude, you will never be strong in the crowd, because the crowd will test you. The pressure will crush you if you haven't already built your foundation when you were alone. The leaders you admire didn't become who they are by accident. They didn't stumble into greatness because someone handed it to them. They forged it in silence. They sacrificed comfort. They chose discipline when nobody was watching. They put in hours of work that no one clapped for, no one posted about, no one even knew existed. And when the moment came, when the world finally saw them, they were ready. That readiness wasn't built in public. It was built in solitude. That's why solitude is not punishment. It is a gift. It is the place where the voice of your soul becomes louder than the noise of the world. It is the place where you realize your true standards, where you decide what you will tolerate and what you will no longer allow. It is the place where you break yourself down so you can rebuild into something stronger, and this process, this lonely, quiet, brutal process, is exactly what separates leaders from followers. It's what separates high performers from average people. Because the average person avoids solitude, they can't stand to be alone with themselves. They run to distractions, they run to comfort, they run to the noise that helps them forget their own weakness. But leaders don't run from solitude, they embrace it. They walk into it willingly because they know greatness demands it. They know isolation is not just about being alone, it's about becoming aligned. Aligned with your values, aligned with your mission, aligned with the strongest version of yourself. When you are in solitude, you are not pulled by the opinions of others. You are not distracted by their expectations. You are free to build your identity based on truth, not on performance, and that identity is unshakable. Because when you know who you are in the dark, no amount of pressure in the light can break you. The crowd can cheer, the crowd can boo, the crowd can misunderstand you, criticize you, or even try to destroy you, but none of it matters because your identity wasn't built on their approval, it was built in solitude. That's why every great leader has a story of being alone, misunderstood, doubted, and even rejected. They weren't shaped by applause. They were shaped by the silence. They were shaped by nights of doubt, mornings of discipline, and endless hours of unseen work. And those lonely hours became the bricks that built their foundation. When you understand this, solitude stops being something you fear. It becomes something you crave, because you know that in those moments, you're not losing time. You're investing in yourself. You're sharpening your vision. You're aligning with your purpose. You're preparing for the battles the world doesn't even know are coming. And when those battles arrive, you'll be ready. Not because of what you did in front of people, but because of what you did when nobody was there. Greatness isn't born in the spotlight, it's born in the shadows, it's born in the discipline of isolation, it's born in the hours that nobody sees and nobody applauds, and that's exactly why solitude is the birthplace of leaders. It's the forge of identity, it's the silent battlefield where greatness is won long before the world ever notices. Facing yourself is the hardest battle you will ever fight. It's not about competing with others. It's not about proving yourself to the world. It's about standing in front of the mirror and admitting the truth you've been avoiding. Most people don't do this. They spend their entire lives hiding behind masks, playing roles, and performing for an audience that doesn't even care. They live a fake version of life because they're too afraid of what they'll see if they strip all of that away. But here's the reality. Facing yourself is the only path to authenticity. You cannot become the strongest version of you while pretending to be someone else. You cannot build a life of meaning while living a lie, and you cannot meet your soul until you're willing to confront the parts of yourself you've been running from. When you face yourself, you see it all. The good, the bad, the ugly, the victories you're proud of, the failures you try to bury, the discipline you've shown, the weakness you've excused. It's raw, it's unfiltered, and it's brutal. That's why most people avoid it. They don't want to admit how many promises they've broken to themselves. They don't want to admit how much potential they've wasted. They don't want to admit they've been living someone else's dream instead of their own. But authenticity is born in that exact moment, because once you meet your soul, once you see yourself without filters, without excuses, without masks, you can no longer accept the fake version of life. You stop pretending, you stop lying to yourself, you stop chasing validation from others. Instead, you begin to live in alignment, alignment with your values, alignment with your vision, alignment with the truth of who you are and who you want to become. And that shift changes everything, because when you face yourself, the weight of pretending disappears. You no longer need to exhaust yourself trying to fit into roles that were never meant for you. You no longer need to keep up appearances for people who don't matter. You no longer need to sacrifice your soul for approval. You start living with clarity. You start walking with purpose. You start showing up as the real you. the one you've been hiding for years, and people can feel it. They can sense when someone is authentic, when someone is speaking and living from a place of truth. That kind of presence is powerful. It inspires respect. It demands attention. It influences without effort. Because authenticity has a weight that no performance can ever match, but it doesn't come cheap. It requires courage. It requires discipline. It requires the willingness to be uncomfortable, to admit your flaws, and to rebuild yourself from the ground up. Facing yourself is not a one-time event. It's a daily choice. Every day you either choose honesty or you choose the lie. You either choose growth or you choose comfort. You either choose to face your soul or to keep running from it. The people who choose honesty, who choose to face themselves consistently, are the ones who rise. They rise not because life got easier, but because they got real. They built a foundation on truth instead of illusion. They stopped living as actors in someone else's play and started writing their own script. And that script is authentic, powerful, and aligned with their purpose. The fake version of life dies the moment you choose to face yourself. The masks fall off, the noise fades, the fear loses its grip, and in its place, authenticity takes over. That's when you stop living to be liked and start living to be fulfilled. That's when you stop chasing approval and start chasing purpose. That's when you stop existing and start truly living, because authenticity is freedom. It's freedom from pretending. It's freedom from the weight of lies. It's freedom from the constant battle of trying to be something you're not. But you don't find that freedom by looking outward. You only find it by looking inward, by sitting in silence, by facing your flaws head on, by confronting the parts of yourself you've been denying. And once you do that, once you truly meet your soul, you will never go back. You will never again settle for living as a watered down fake version of yourself. You will demand more. You will expect more. You will live with a standard that refuses to compromise because you've seen the truth. And once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. You can't unknow who you really are. You can't unknow what you're truly capable of. That is the gift of facing yourself. It is painful. It is uncomfortable. But it is the path to authenticity. And authenticity is the only way to live a life that actually means something. So understand this. You can spend your whole life hiding, pretending, and performing. You can keep wearing the masks, chasing approval, and living a watered-down version of yourself. Or you can make the harder choice, the real choice. You can face yourself. You can meet your soul. And when you do, you will never again settle for less than truth, less than purpose, less than the life you were born to live. That's the moment authenticity takes over. That's the moment the fake life dies. And that's the moment the real you finally begins.